Have you ever felt your heart racing, your palms sweating, and your voice completely stuck the moment you try to speak English? You know the words, you've practiced them, but when it's time to speak, everything freezes. It feels like the world is watching, waiting for you to make a mistake, and in that moment, fear takes over. But let me tell you something powerful. Freezing is not a sign that you're weak or incapable. It's a sign that you care. It means you want to do well, you want to be understood, and you want to prove yourself. That pressure is heavy, but it doesn't define you. Think about it. When you were a child learning your first language, you didn't care about mistakes. You spoke freely, you laughed when you got words wrong, and you kept trying until you got it right. Somewhere along the way, society told you that mistakes are embarrassing. But in reality, mistakes are the proof that you're growing. The next time you freeze, pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Don't fight the silence, own it. Look at the person in front of you and remember, they don't want you to fail. They want to hear your voice. Even if you stumble, even if you mispronounce, even if you pause too long, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you speak. Confidence doesn't come from speaking perfectly. It comes from speaking bravely. Every single time you push through the fear and say even one sentence, you are winning. You are building the muscle of courage, and soon those moments of freezing will disappear. So don't wait for perfection. Don't wait for the right words. Speak now, speak from the heart, and let the world hear your voice, because your voice has power. Your message matters, and every time you choose courage over fear, you step closer to the fluent, confident speaker you are meant to be. When you freeze while speaking English, it's easy to think of it as a weakness, as if something is wrong with you. You may even compare yourself to others who speak more fluently and wonder why your voice gets stuck or why your mind goes blank. But here's the truth that most people don't realize. Freezing is not a sign that you're weak or incapable. In fact, it's the opposite. Freezing is proof that you care deeply about what you are saying and how you are being received. It shows that you value communication, that you want to be understood, and that you want to connect with the person in front of you. If you didn't care, you wouldn't feel nervous at all. You would just speak without thought, without intention, without passion. The very fact that your body reacts so strongly means your heart and mind are invested in the moment. Think about it. When you are about to do something important, your body often responds with tension. Imagine an athlete just seconds before a race starts. Their heartbeat accelerates, their hands tremble, and their muscles tighten. Is that weakness? No, it's intensity. It's the body preparing to perform at its highest level. That same reaction happens when you speak English. Your brain recognizes that this moment matters to you, so your body heightens its alertness. What you call freezing is simply your body's way of saying, this is important. Instead of labeling it as failure, see it as proof that you care enough to want to do well. Most people confuse confidence with the absence of nerves. They think confident speakers never feel nervous, but that's not true. Even the most powerful speakers, leaders, and communicators in the world feel that nervous energy before they speak. The difference is they don't see it as a weakness. They understand it is a sign that the message matters. And once you begin to look at freezing through this perspective, you stop criticizing yourself for it and start appreciating the fact that your emotions are aligned with your goals. You are not detached or careless. You are someone who values growth, and that's why you feel that pressure. Freezing also happens because you are aiming for something greater than your current comfort zone. Whenever you step outside of what feels safe, your brain sends signals of fear to protect you. If you are speaking your native language, you rarely freeze because it's comfortable and familiar. But when you attempt English, your brain senses the risk of mistakes, embarrassment, or judgment. That moment of freezing is simply your brain trying to keep you in your comfort zone. But here's the inspiring part. The very discomfort you feel is evidence that you're expanding your limits. Without that tension, without that care, there would be no growth. So every time you freeze, it's actually a sign that you are stretching yourself into becoming better than you were yesterday. You can also think of it this way. Freezing is the mind's way of pausing before taking a leap. Imagine standing at the edge of a diving board for the first time. Your body stiffens, your breath gets shallow, and you almost can't move. But that moment is not weakness. It's the body preparing for the jump. The same thing happens when you freeze before speaking English. You are standing at the edge of growth. That pause, that hesitation, is simply the build-up before you dive into expression. Instead of running away from it, acknowledge it, breathe into it, and use it as energy to move forward. Another reason freezing feels so strong is because of the importance of communication in human connection. Language is not just words, it's identity, it's emotion, it's belonging. When you try to speak English, you're not just transferring information, you're showing a part of yourself to the world. You're allowing others to see your thoughts, your personality, your intelligence. That's why you freeze. It's not about forgetting grammar rules or lacking vocabulary. It's about the fear of being misunderstood, of not being accepted, of not being respected. And again, that fear only exists because you care so deeply about being heard. If you didn't value communication, you would never feel that nervous tension. What many learners fail to notice is that this very act of freezing is proof of their potential. People who don't care about improving never freeze. They remain stuck in the comfort of silence or in their own language. But you, the one who freezes, are the one who is stepping into courage. You are putting yourself in situations that challenge you, and freezing is simply part of that journey. It's like a road sign reminding you that you're on the right path, the path of growth. So instead of criticizing yourself, the next time your mind goes blank, try to reframe it. Tell yourself, I feel this way because I care. I freeze because this matters to me. I stumble because I am pushing myself to grow. And when you begin to see freezing as a natural reaction to your own commitment and passion, you remove the shame attached to it. You begin to feel proud that you are someone who dares to care, someone who dares to step forward even when the voice shakes. That is not weakness. It is strength in its rawest form. Mistakes. That single word often carries so much weight, especially when it comes to speaking English. Many learners fear mistakes more than anything else. They imagine people laughing, judging, or thinking less of them if they say a word wrong, forget grammar rules, or pause awkwardly. That fear is so strong that it sometimes silences them completely. But the truth is, mistakes are not the enemy. They are not proof of weakness or failure. In fact, mistakes are the very evidence that you are growing, that you are learning, and that you are moving forward. Without mistakes, there is no progress. Without mistakes, there is no mastery. Think back to when you learned to walk as a child. You didn't stand up one day and start running perfectly. You stumbled, you fell, you cried, and then you tried again. Every fall was a mistake, but every mistake took you closer to walking with balance. Nobody ever said, "Look at this child. They fell, so they are a failure." Instead, everyone celebrated because those falls were steps towards success. The same principle applies to English. Every time you mispronounce a word, every time you forget the right phrase, every time your grammar slips, it's not a setback. It's training. It's practice. It's your mind building new connections and your tongue learning new movements. Mistakes are not an obstacle on the road to fluency. They are the road itself. The problem is most people carry the wrong perception of mistakes. From school exams to social settings, mistakes were treated as something shameful, something to avoid at all costs. But life is not an exam. Communication is not a test paper. When you speak, nobody is sitting with a red pen to mark your errors. People care far less about your mistakes than you think. In fact, many listeners admire your courage. They see someone who is trying, someone who is willing to step outside their comfort zone. And often they don't even notice half the mistakes you are worried about. What they notice is your effort, your intention, your willingness to share. Mistakes are also teachers. Every error you make carries a lesson inside it. If you mispronounce a word and someone corrects you, that correction stays with you longer than if you had simply memorized the word in silence. If you use the wrong tense and later realize it, your brain records that experience with more clarity because emotions were attached to it. That's how learning works. The brain remembers what challenges it. So instead of running from mistakes, embrace them as opportunities to strengthen your memory and skill. Imagine someone who refuses to make mistakes because they are afraid of embarrassment. They stay silent in conversations, they avoid speaking in front of others, and they stick only to the sentences they already know. On the surface, they look safe, they don't get laughed at, they don't stumble, they don't freeze, but beneath that safety, they are stuck. They are not growing. Compare this with someone who makes mistake after mistake. Their grammar is shaky, their vocabulary is limited, but they keep trying. They get corrected, they get misunderstood, but they continue speaking. Day by day, they improve. Month by month, they become more confident. Eventually, the one who risked mistakes becomes fluent, while the one who stayed safe remains silent. Mistakes are not the barrier to fluency. Fear of mistakes is. Think about your own journey. How many times have you stopped yourself from speaking because you thought, what if I say it wrong? That single thought has silenced countless voices. But what if you change that thought into, even if I say it wrong, I will learn something? Suddenly every conversation becomes a classroom, every listener becomes a teacher, and every mistake becomes progress. You no longer fear speaking, you see it as practice. That mindset is powerful because it frees you from the prison of perfection. It's also important to remember that even native speakers make mistakes. They slip on words, they mispronounce, they forget grammar rules in fast conversations. Nobody calls them failures. Why? Because mistakes are part of communication. The goal of speaking is not perfection, it is connection. If the person in front of you understands your message, then you have succeeded, even if your grammar wasn't perfect, even if your words weren't polished. Language is not about flawless delivery. It's about sharing thoughts, emotions, and meaning. Mistakes don't block that connection. They make it more human, more real, more relatable. So the next time you make a mistake in English, remind yourself that it is not the end of the world. It is a stepping stone, a marker of growth, a sign that you dared to try. Without mistakes, there is no learning. Without learning, there is no fluency. And every single successful speaker you admire today has gone through the same journey of making countless mistakes before reaching confidence. The difference between them and those who remain silent is not talent, it's the willingness to fail forward. When you freeze in the middle of speaking English, the silence feels like an enemy. Your mind races, your heartbeat grows louder, and you think everyone is staring, waiting for you to speak. In that exact moment, panic makes the silence feel unbearable. You want to run away, to hide, to escape the pressure of the situation. But here's something you need to understand. Silence is not failure. Silence is not weakness. Silence can actually be your tool, your shield, and your friend if you know how to use it. Learning to pause and breathe in those moments can transform your entire speaking experience. When you freeze, it's your body's natural way of telling you that it's overwhelmed. The brain is juggling fear, vocabulary, grammar, and self-consciousness all at once, and it hits a sudden stop. Most people react to that stop with panic. They rush to fill the silence, they apologize, or they give up entirely. But the truth is, you don't need to fight the silence, you can own it. A simple pause, even for a few seconds, doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look thoughtful. Think about great speakers you've watched. They don't rush every word. They pause, they breathe, they give space for their thoughts to land. That pause gives them control, and it can give you control too. Breathing is the anchor that keeps you steady in those moments. When you freeze, your breath often becomes shallow, fast, or even held back completely. That lack of oxygen only makes the panic worse. But when you intentionally take a slow, deep breath, everything changes. Your heart rate slows down, your mind regains clarity, and your voice begins to feel stronger again. Breathing is like hitting the reset button for your body. It tells your nervous system, I am safe, I can continue. The silence that felt terrifying a moment ago becomes manageable because your breath guides you through it. It's also important to realize that silence feels much longer to you than it does to others. When you pause for 3 seconds, it might feel like 30 seconds in your own mind, but to the listener, it's just a natural pause. Nobody is counting your seconds. Nobody is thinking, why is this person quiet? In fact, many times the listener doesn't even notice your pause. They're simply waiting for your words. The fear exists more in your mind than in reality. Once you understand that, You stop running from silence and start embracing it as part of normal communication. Think of silence as your secret space. In that space, you can gather your thoughts, remember the word you want to use, or even reframe your sentence in a simpler way. Instead of pressuring yourself to speak perfectly and instantly, you give yourself permission to think, and that permission makes all the difference. Fluency is not about speaking without stopping. It's about knowing how to manage the stops. Professional speakers, teachers, and leaders use pauses deliberately to make their message stronger. You can do the same in English conversations. Another benefit of pausing is that it shifts the focus from fear to control. When you freeze, your fear tells you you are stuck, you can't continue, you are failing. But when you deliberately pause, you send yourself a different message. I am choosing to pause. I am in control of my words. That change in mindset is powerful. You are no longer a victim of freezing. You are a speaker who uses silence as a tool. And the moment you reclaim that control, confidence starts to grow. Imagine this. You're speaking in English and suddenly your mind goes blank. Instead of panicking, you stop for a second, take a deep breath, look at the person in front of you, and then continue with a simpler sentence. What does the listener see? They see calmness. They see someone who thinks before they speak. They don't see weakness. They see composure. And each time you handle freezing this way, you train your brain to respond with calm instead of panic. Over time, the freezing moments become less intense because your brain learns that silence is safe, not dangerous. There is also something beautiful about silence that people rarely talk about. It gives weight to your words. When you pause, your listener leans in, waiting for what comes next. That small gap creates anticipation, and anticipation gives your message more impact. Even if you are still learning English, your pauses can make your speech sound powerful. Instead of rushing nervously, you create rhythm. Instead of sounding anxious, you sound deliberate. The silence you once feared becomes a part of your strength. Breathing and pausing also connect you with your own emotions. When you rush through sentences out of fear, you lose the connection to what you're truly trying to express. But when you slow down, you allow your feelings to align with your words. You speak with more authenticity, and authenticity matters far more than perfect grammar. People don't remember flawless sentences. They remember sincerity, emotion, and presence. Pausing and breathing give you the presence that makes your message unforgettable. So the next time you freeze, don't see it as failure. See it as an invitation to stop, to breathe, to collect yourself, and then to continue stronger than before. Instead of fearing silence, start practicing it. Pause intentionally in your daily conversations. Take a breath before you respond. Notice how people wait patiently and how your words come out clearer. Over time, you'll discover that what once felt like the most terrifying part of speaking, silence, is actually one of your greatest tools. One of the biggest reasons people freeze while speaking English is the belief that everyone around them is judging their mistakes. You imagine the listener counting every grammar slip, every mispronunciation, every pause. That fear grows so strong that it feels impossible to speak freely. But here's the truth. People are not waiting to catch your mistakes. They are not secretly scoring your fluency or hoping that you fail. In fact, most listeners want exactly the opposite. They want to hear your voice. They want to understand your message. And they want to connect with you as a human being. When you shift your focus from your own fear to the listener's curiosity, your entire perspective changes. Think about the times you've listened to someone who spoke in broken English. Did you sit there waiting for them to fail? Or did you listen patiently, hoping to understand their story, their ideas, their feelings? Most likely you didn't care about their grammar. You cared about what they wanted to share. This is how people usually feel when they listen to you. They are not there to count your errors. They are there to hear your message. What matters is not the perfection of your words, but the heart behind them. When you assume listeners are judging you, you carry unnecessary pressure. That pressure makes you freeze because you are trying to perform rather than communicate. But when you realize that people actually support you more than you think, you allow yourself to relax. You stop chasing perfection and start focusing on connection. The listener is not your enemy. They are your partner in communication. They want you to succeed because your success means they get to hear your thoughts more clearly. Imagine sitting in a classroom where a fellow student struggles to explain an idea in English. They pause, they stumble, they use the wrong word. What do you do as a listener? You wait, you give them time. Maybe you even help them with the word they're searching for. That's how most people behave when they listen to you. They are not mocking you in their heads. They are silently rooting for you to continue. And sometimes the help you fear is actually kindness. When someone corrects your pronunciation or gives you a word, it's not a sign that they think you're weak. It's a sign that they care enough to support you. There's also a simple truth that we often forget. People don't notice nearly as much as we think they do. You might obsess over one small mistake for hours, but your listener has already forgotten it within seconds. They are focused on the flow of the conversation, not on the tiny details. To them, you are brave for speaking another language at all. To you, the mistake feels huge. To them, it is invisible. This difference in perspective can free you from the weight of self-criticism. Listeners also admire courage. When they see you trying, even with mistakes, they respect you more than someone who stays silent. Speaking a second language takes bravery, and people recognize that. They think this person is putting effort, this person is trying to connect. That effort creates respect, not ridicule. If you've ever admired someone for speaking your native language, even imperfectly, you already know how powerful effort can be. The same admiration exists for you when you speak English. Another important thing to remember is that communication is not a one-way street. The responsibility is not only on you to speak perfectly, it's also on the listener to understand you. That's how real conversations work. Sometimes you will use simple words, sometimes you will pause to explain in another way, and sometimes the listener will adjust their understanding to meet you halfway. That collaboration is what makes communication human. You don't have to carry the whole weight of the conversation on your shoulders. When you start trusting your listeners instead of fearing them, your speech becomes more natural. You stop overthinking every sentence and start expressing what you truly feel. That authenticity makes you more engaging than perfect grammar ever could. People don't connect with robots who speak without flaws. They connect with humans who show effort, vulnerability, and sincerity. Even your pauses and mistakes can make you more relatable because they show you are real. Picture this. You are giving a small talk in English, and suddenly you forget a word. You pause, maybe you laugh nervously, maybe you describe the word in another way. The audience doesn't think, what a failure. They think, wow, this person is handling it with courage. Sometimes that moment of imperfection becomes the most memorable part because it shows strength in vulnerability. It shows that you value sharing your message more than hiding from fear. And here's something even more encouraging. Many listeners are inspired by your effort. They see you speaking English, facing challenges, and pushing through them, and they think, if they can do it, maybe I can too. Without even knowing it, you become a source of motivation for others. What you saw as weakness, others see as bravery. What you thought was a mistake, others see as courage. So the next time you speak, remember this. Your listeners are not sitting there hoping you fail. They are waiting, sometimes eagerly, to hear your thoughts. They want your voice, not your perfection. They care about your message, not your grammar. And when you trust that truth, you will no longer freeze in fear of judgment. Instead, you will speak with the confidence of someone who knows that people are on their side. Confidence is one of those words that everyone talks about, but very few truly understand. Many people think confidence means standing tall, speaking without hesitation, and never feeling nervous. They believe that confident speakers are the ones who deliver every sentence flawlessly, with perfect grammar, the right vocabulary, and smooth pronunciation. But that is a myth. Confidence has nothing to do with perfection. In fact, some of the most confident people in the world make mistakes when they speak. They mispronounce, they forget words, they pause too long, but they do it with courage. True confidence is not about being flawless. It's about being brave enough to keep speaking even when you are not perfect. Think about this for a moment. How many times have you stopped yourself from speaking because you were afraid of making a mistake? How many opportunities did you let slip away because you waited until your English sounded good enough? If you wait for perfection, you will wait forever. There is no such thing as a perfect speaker. Even native speakers make errors, change their sentences midway, or forget what they were about to say. Perfection is an illusion, and chasing it will only silence your voice. Courage, on the other hand, is real. Courage is choosing to speak up even when your grammar isn't perfect. Courage is saying, I may stumble, but I will try. And that act of bravery is what builds true confidence. Confidence is like a muscle. It doesn't appear overnight. It grows every time you use it. Every time you open your mouth and say something in English, no matter how small, you are training that muscle. The first time it feels weak. The second time it still shakes. But as you continue, as you repeat, as you keep showing up, the muscle becomes stronger. Soon you realize that the fear you once had no longer controls you. Not because your English became perfect, but because your courage grew bigger than your fear. It's also important to understand that confidence is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite fear. Even the most skilled speakers feel nervous before they talk. Their hands sweat, their heart races, their mind fills with doubts, but they still step on stage. They still speak. The difference between them and those who stay silent is not talent, it's bravery. They choose courage over perfection. They choose expression over silence. And that choice makes them confident. Now imagine yourself in a real conversation. You're about to say something, but you notice your grammar isn't perfect. You have two choices. You can stay silent, waiting until you form the sentence perfectly, or you can speak anyway, knowing the listener will still understand your meaning. If you choose silence, you protect yourself from mistakes, but you also lose the chance to practice, to connect, to grow. If you choose courage, you may stumble, but you gain experience. And with every experience, your confidence grows. Over time, those small acts of courage add up until you realize that speaking no longer feels impossible. Confidence also comes from accepting that your value is not measured by your English. Your worth is not tied to flawless pronunciation or perfect grammar. You are not less intelligent, less capable, or less worthy just because you are learning. Too often, learners shrink into themselves because they think others will see them as less if they don't speak perfectly. But in reality, the opposite is true. People respect you for trying. They admire you for putting yourself out there. They see the courage in your effort, not the flaws in your sentences. When you internalize this truth, you stop trying to prove yourself with perfection and start showing yourself with authenticity. And that is where real confidence is born. Another powerful thing about courage is that it creates momentum. The first brave step makes the second one easier, and the second makes the third easier. Soon you are speaking in situations that once terrified you. You begin conversations without overthinking. You share your ideas more openly. And every time you do, your brain learns that speaking is safe, that mistakes are survivable, that silence doesn't need to control you. Courage teaches your mind to trust itself. That trust is what eventually transforms into the calmness and freedom people call confidence. Let's think about storytelling for a moment. Imagine someone speaking in broken English but telling a powerful story with heart and passion. Even if they make 10 grammar mistakes, you stay engaged, don't you? Because confidence is not about how the words are arranged, it's about how the message is delivered. A story told with courage can move hearts even if the grammar is wrong. But a story kept inside because of fear touches no one. Your voice has the same power. When you speak with courage, your message becomes more important than your mistakes. Confidence is also contagious. When you speak bravely, others around you feel inspired. They think, if this person can do it despite their fear, so can I. Your courage has the power to light courage in others. You may never know how many people look at you and feel encouraged to try just because they saw you speak, and that is something perfection could never achieve. So remember this, confidence does not come from the day when you finally speak perfect English. That day may never come, and it doesn't need to. Confidence comes from the moments when you choose courage over fear, when you open your mouth even though your heart is racing, when you finish your sentence even though your voice shakes, when you decide that your message is more important than your mistakes. Each of those choices is a victory. Each of those choices builds the unshakable confidence you are searching for. Every time you speak English, even if it's just a single word, you are moving forward. Every attempt counts. Progress is not about giant leaps. It's about small, consistent steps that add up over time. Too often, learners believe they have to speak perfectly before they can call it success. They think fluency is a final destination, a moment when mistakes disappear and every sentence flows effortlessly. But that way of thinking ignores the truth. Fluency is not a sudden achievement, it is a journey. And every attempt, no matter how broken, nervous, or hesitant, is a step on that journey. Think about how children learn to speak. They don't wait until they know every rule of grammar before opening their mouths. They speak imperfectly, sometimes using one word for everything, sometimes mixing words that make no sense, but they don't stop. They try again and again, and with every attempt, their language grows stronger. That's how learning works, not in silence, not in perfection, but in repeated effort. The same applies to you. Each time you speak, whether it's one sentence in class, a short answer to a friend, or even a single word in a shop, you are building your ability. What looks small today becomes powerful tomorrow. The mistake many learners make is judging their progress too harshly. They think, I only said one sentence, that's nothing, or I made 3 mistakes, so it doesn't count. But those judgments are unfair. That one sentence is proof that you faced fear and chose courage. Those 3 mistakes are proof that you stepped into practice instead of hiding. Every attempt is progress because it moves you closer to confidence, even if you can't see it immediately. Learning a language is not about one big breakthrough. It's about thousands of small breakthroughs that eventually transform into fluency. Every attempt also rewires your brain. Science shows that each time you use a new skill, your brain strengthens the connections between neurons. When you say a word in English, even with hesitation, you are training your brain to recall it faster next time. When you form a sentence, even if it's clumsy, your brain learns to organize ideas in English more naturally. That process doesn't happen when you stay silent. It only happens when you try. So the attempts you dismiss as not good enough are actually powerful moments of growth inside your mind. Think about sports for a moment. An athlete doesn't become skilled by only practicing when they are perfect. They improve by training daily, by repeating drills, by attempting moves even when they fail. Every attempt, successful or not, builds muscle memory. Language is no different. Each time you speak English, you are building muscle memory for your tongue, your brain, and your confidence. You may not notice the progress right away, but it's happening silently and steadily. And one day, you'll look back and realize how far those small attempts have taken you. Another reason every attempt matters is because it slowly kills the fear of speaking. The first time you speak in front of others, the fear is huge. Your hands shake, your voice trembles, your heart races. But when you attempt it again, the fear becomes slightly smaller. The third time, smaller still. Eventually, what once felt impossible becomes normal, not because the fear disappeared magically, but because you trained yourself through repetition. Each attempt weakens fear's power over you. Silence keeps fear alive. Attempts starve it. It's also important to realize that fluency doesn't come in straight lines. Some days you'll speak smoothly, other days you'll stumble more. That doesn't mean you are failing. It means you are human. Every attempt, even the messy ones, contributes to the bigger picture. Progress is often invisible in the moment, but visible over time. Just like a tree doesn't grow taller in a single day, your English doesn't transform in one conversation. But every word you speak is like water and sunlight feeding that growth. You may not notice the difference day by day, but over weeks, months, and years, those attempts will create a transformation you never imagined. Even native speakers became fluent only because they attempted speaking thousands of times. They made mistakes as children, repeated words incorrectly, forgot vocabulary, but nobody stopped them. They learned through endless attempts. You deserve the same patience with yourself. Stop measuring yourself against perfection and start measuring yourself against effort. Did you try today? Did you say something in English? Then you move forward. That is what counts. And here's something powerful to remember. Every attempt, no matter how small, builds courage for the next one. When you speak one sentence today, it gives you the courage to try 2 tomorrow. When you survive one awkward pause, it shows you that you can survive the next one. Courage builds in layers, and every attempt adds a layer of strength. Eventually, those layers create unshakable confidence. So don't underestimate the power of your efforts. Don't dismiss them as too small. Each word you speak, each conversation you attempt, each mistake you make is like a brick. On its own, a single brick doesn't look like much. But brick by brick, you are building the structure of your fluency. One day, you will look at the building and realize how tall and strong it has become. And it will all be because you dared to try again and again, even when it wasn't perfect. So here you are, standing at the edge of change, carrying every fear, every mistake, every moment of freezing, and yet still daring to try. You have learned that freezing means you care, that mistakes are proof of growth, that silence can be your power, that listeners are your allies, that confidence comes from courage, and that every single attempt is progress. The truth is, you don't need to wait for the perfect day, the perfect sentence, or the perfect fluency to speak. That day will never come, and it doesn't need to. What you need is already inside you. The courage to open your mouth, to let your voice be heard, to trust that your message matters more than your mistakes. So the next time your heart races, the next time your mind goes blank, the next time fear whispers, "Don't speak," remember this moment. Remember that your voice has power. Remember that you are not just learning English. You are building courage, resilience, and strength that will carry you far beyond language. Step forward, speak bravely. Let the world hear you, not the perfect version of you, but the real you. Because it is your imperfect, courageous voice that will inspire, connect, and leave a mark. And when you choose courage over fear, even for a single sentence, you are already unstoppable.